Hey, welcome back to the YouTube channel for Dancing with My Mother. My name is Sharita Costa. Now, if you saw my last video, you would know that I said I would maybe talk about when I auditioned for the Moulin Rouge film by Baz Luhrmann, starring Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor. So, here we go. I was actually around about 40 when I auditioned, and I knew that they wanted dancers of all ages and all shapes and colors and give them everything, because that's how Baz works. He really likes to have an array to choose from, because sometimes an idea will come to him just from seeing something he hadn't expected. So I thought, well, I'm 40, but I'm still dancing, and I was dancing quite well, I thought. So I went along. And, oh boy, I went into where they were holding the auditions, and that's always a daunting thing, right? But usually, because I had reached a certain age and a certain stature, and I don't say that with a big ego, but I did have a certain name in the industry, and it would usually be a private audition or maybe just a few people. Oh my gosh, this room was just, you couldn't see the floor. There was just a sea of beautiful young dancers stretching. They were on the floor, they were against the wall, they had their legs up the wall, they were all over the place, right? So to find a place just to put your bag down and get comfortable and find a place for you to warm up, and that's very important before any audition, because that helps with the nerves, right? It was near impossible. I felt like being, and I have been on the subway in New York, so I do know what it's like. So it was like this, or the underground in London. You can't warm up like that, but I did my best. And of course, everyone was dressed to the nines in their best outfits, tights, shoes, whatever. And they all looked incredible. So straight away, my confidence plummeted. Didn't matter that I had such a reputation. In fact, that almost made it worse, because I wasn't anonymous. And people are going, "Hey, Cherie, how are you?" I was just trying to find someone I could hang with that would make me feel a little less scared and obvious. I can't remember who I hung with, but anyway, I did find somebody. I know I was talking to a few people. Now, we won't pretend for a second that everybody there had anybody else's best interests at heart. This was a cutthroat audition. This was a film that would be filming with rehearsals, possibly, 9 months, 6 months, it depended what role, if you got one, what that role entailed. But we knew it was good work. And of course, working with huge Hollywood stars, some amazing British talent, and also incredible Australian talent, and working with John O'Connell, the choreographer, who everybody loved. Everybody called him Cha-Cha. So when I say Cha-Cha from now on, you know I'm talking about the choreographer. Eventually, I get to go in, and of course, just let me backtrack. When I was outside the door, as all of us could hear, the group or groups before us would go in, and they're doing obviously a very fast can-can. And there's whoops and there's yells and people trying to be noticed, and I'm going, what am I doing here? And anyway, so I went in and we did a can-can straight away from memory. Oh, let me tell you. Now, a can-can is hard on your cardiovascular system. That wasn't an issue for me, not at all. And I still, even though I was 40, I still had incredibly high extensions, and I do mean really high. So when I kicked my leg, it would go like past my ear, and that wasn't an issue. But what I hadn't counted on was the speed of the can-can. So can-can would usually be Da, 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 da. So there's enough time to get your leg up and enough time to get your leg down, and gravity will help. Not with this. It was a much faster can-can. I can't remember the music, but it was, I'm sorry to say it, quite frankly, ridiculous and kind of silly, because it meant throwing your leg up really fast. But the thing that did me in was bringing the leg down at speed. So you couldn't just let gravity, you had to intervene with your own muscle strength. And so I would bring it down really hard. And what that did, and I guess because of a career doing crazy stuff like this for choreographers, I felt something go in one of my hamstrings. And I thought, that can't be good. But I kept going. So when you're warm, just like when you see a footballer and they do a hammy, as they call it here in Australia, I don't know if they use that term anywhere else. Look out, you do a hammy. I brought my leg down, and I brought it down with such power to get it down on time so I could get the other one up there, that I basically ripped one of the two attachments off. I think it's called the ischial tuberosity, but whatever. I ripped something off, and it wasn't a good thing. But because you're warm, you just keep going. The blood's pumping, and so I think I did that can 2 or 3 times. We all had a few goes at it, and then it's like, thank you for coming, and we'll let you know. And I forgot to tell you, of course, who's sitting there at a table but Baz Luhrmann. And you've got John O'Connell there. And I'd worked with John before, but this is very different. This is a huge movie. You've got some incredible people in that room, casting agents from America in there. So anyway, I picked up my bag, tried to walk as normally as possible to the door, said goodbye to people, and as I went down the stairs, I could feel this thing starting to really kick in, because it was cooling down and the adrenaline was starting to drop. And I thought, oh boy, I've really done a bad thing to myself here. And by the time I got back to the car to drive, I could barely walk. And so I'm grabbing paracetamol and anything else I had in my handbag just to take the pain away. And anyway, so recovery happened straight away. I went to a physio and lots of ice and all that sort of stuff, and it started to get better. But while we were waiting for the results of these auditions, which I think were being held in other states in Australia as well, and of course then they've got to get all the people's names and photos and put them all out, and I'm thinking, do I really want to put my body under so much stress for so long, and also be up against such incredibly gifted and young and super fit dancers? And let's face it, once you hit, your late 30s into your 40s, you're not going to be able to keep up with the younger dancers. You can to some degree in some areas, but you can't if they're, 18, 19, early 20s, as some of these were. They were really in their prime as dancers, physically. Not saying, as an actor or anything like that, but definitely physically. And I thought about it, and I realized that perhaps I didn't want to be a dancer, a can-can dancer this time. Also, I've got to say, and I perhaps I was reading too much into it, but I was no young, naive, silly little dancer who didn't know anything. My feeling was that they were very polite, very nice, but that they weren't really interested, that they were looking for something that wasn't me this time. And that's fine, because you get to a certain age where, again, this is not ego talking, but I would go to an audition and pretty much know I'd got the job as soon as I'd walked out of the room. This didn't feel like that. And I had to be realistic, and I just hurt myself. So I thought, I should find out who are the assistant choreographers to John O'Connell, because that is something I know I'm good at, and I'd already done it quite a bit for my ex-husband. Is an amazing dancer and performer and producer and director, and I used to be his assistant, and he won an Olivia Award, which is a very high award to win in London for choreography for his show Hot Shoe Shuffle. So we're not talking about somebody who doesn't know what they're doing, right? And had very high standards. I'd also assisted other choreographers as well, and I knew this is something I'm very good at. And I thought, being 40, it's a good age to maybe see if I can get in there. So I did it. I did my research, and then I approached John. As I said, I knew John O'Connell, Cha-Cha, and I sent him a letter, an email. Goodness knows, I can't remember exactly what I sent him, but it got through. And a few days later, he rang me and said, yes, I actually have my assistants, but I'm not entirely sure yet if that's the combination I want. So I would like you to come in and talk to me. So that's what I did. At that time, Baz Luhrmann's company was in a place called Darlinghurst, which is in the inner city of Sydney. Very trendy, kind of rundown, kind of not rundown, bohemian type of suburb, if you can call it a suburb. And where Baz was this incredible building, which he had changed into his office and also where he lived, and stunning. This huge place in the middle of all these tiny little terrace houses. I'll never forget it. And I went in and I talked to Cha-Cha for quite a while, put forward my case about why I would be good for him, how I would work with him. And I knew he had a soft spot for me, as I did for him. And I thought, well, look, I've put it out there. And it didn't take too long, maybe, I would say a week, but it's hard to say exactly, but certainly not as long as I thought, before I was informed that he would like to use me, but he would like to sort of try me out first. And I thought, fair enough, you've never worked with me as an assistant before. And it's a bit of a marriage, a creative marriage, so it has to be right. So I thought, so I wonder what I'll be doing. And he said, we would like you to come in and warm up Nicole and Ewan before we do some rehearsals with them. And I went, yeah, no problem. And I thought, oh my God, I've got to do a warm up. I think it was half an hour of work with them. They don't know me. I didn't know them. I knew of them, of course. And will they trust me to look after them? So I worked on this warm up for them, and they came into the room. I was so nervous. Oh my God. So nervous. And I'm not usually starstruck, but I was starstruck. They walked in the door with assistants and all the rest of it. And I don't mean an entourage. I just mean, one person with each of them, just to make sure that, they had everything they needed, water, towels, all that sort of stuff. And I met them, shook their hand, and then the dancer in me just took over. The discipline took over. And I took them through a warm-up, and I made sure that we had fun and that we had a laugh. We had great music, and they were delightful. And then they left and went off and did their thing. And I thought, well, I think that went well, but perhaps they're just such nice people. They're, going, well, she's trying really hard. We'll leave here and say, not her. But that wasn't the case. They liked me. And so I got to work on Moulin Rouge, and I got to say, and I've already said it in the prior video. Boy, I'd say as an overall thing, as a dancer as well, in some ways, one of the best jobs I've ever done. Certainly as an assistant, definitely the best job. And I actually worked on Moulin Rouge for about a year because we had workshop rehearsals with a small group of the can-can dancers, the ones that John really trusted and knew that they would understand what his vision was. And then Baz would come in and he would shoot with a few cameramen, sometimes just on his own, and then they would talk about the ideas, and then Cha-Cha would change things for the next rehearsal. So it was very much a discovery period. Sometimes we would do improvisation. The other assistant choreographer, Pammy, and I would, take turns warming them up, and then eventually the entire cast started coming in once we had everything mapped out, not just from the choreography department, but all the departments, and then there would be fittings. It was amazing. It was just magic. It was all shot at what was then called Fox Studios in Sydney, so it was local, and you never knew what was going to happen next. Such a good experience. I learned so much. And at times I had to even stand in for Nicole or for another can-can dancer if someone had to go to a costume fitting or they were unwell, that kind of thing. So it was great. I'm actually in the film. You would never know it. But in one of the numbers, we used to call it the Hindi, I was right up the back dressed as a ballerina, on point, dancing on some tiny little platform. Is quite funny and felt really scary, but I loved it. I thought, I'm on set. It's fabulous. So that was terrific. And one of those times when you go, thank goodness I hurt myself because it made me think outside the square. And I got to do that. I would love to have done another film somewhere, sometime, but that didn't happen. However, grateful beyond words. Thank you, Baz Luhrmann. Thank you, Cha-Cha O'Connell, John O'Connell. Thank you to the cast and crew of Moulin Rouge. I loved every single one of you. Really, really love you. Thank you.